you have come across in your work with writing contracts or accepting contracts, and what are some of the things that sort of get you? Like, how do I do that? How should I say that? Or what are some of the, this is a class about pitfalls or questions. So tell me some of your, without looking at any of this material yet, what would you say is some of your questions or sticking points when you're writing or receiving a contract? Anybody? Yes.
I would say I heard them in East Office, but maybe going over the binding date versus the actual when that contract's actually bound versus that date on the bond. Yeah.
Okay. Binding. Yeah, that's a big.
Tyler was talking to somebody in the office literally just like 2 days ago about it, so I figured it's always a good topic. Yeah.
Okay, binding date. What else? Contingencies. Contingencies. Any particular one? Maria? No. Anybody else?
Doing HOAs. Like I don't do a lot of them, so they're very hard to navigate for me when I have to.
Okay. What's some other sticky points or sticky spots?
When the disclosure isn't filled out yet, but we might need multiple offers.
Oh, okay. Like the property condition?
Yes.
We're going to call that the PCD. Yes?
Is it the notification form? Or
What are you saying about that?
I don't really.
What is it?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't print that one out, but I will tell you about it, and I'll tell you what the number is. Does everybody have a packet? I mean, those are really beautifully printed out, the things I we need one more for Kate.
I got this right here. I can do it.
We probably need a couple extra. Do you want to go? I think we've got somebody communicating one. Yolanda, you get to be the assistant, teacher assistant. Yes,
Are you
Andrew.
asking for just when you're writing a contract or the process?
Anything that is really kind of giving
My
you,
biggest questions usually come from the inspection.
it comes from inspections, okay? Like what?
Like timing,
Okay?
when the contract, is either becomes dead or if the contract, they accept as is.
Right.
That's what.
Okay. Anybody else have any burn? Yes.
Pick out laws.
Okay. Okay? Anything else before we dig in? Okay. Then let's start. Now, I didn't print out the purchase and sale agreement so we can go over it line by line because I do that in Jumpstart every time. So we're not going to do that. But what we are going to note is some of these things and how it relates to either writing a contract or if you're a listing agent receiving a contract. Okay? So, if you're writing a contract, we're not going to go into the basics. But where I find one of the biggest sticking points, which I have put down here, is what's included. Okay? And is many of you believe that you know the contract, and because I'm at Village, that you know the contract inside out. But what I find every time, and that's that first paragraph after the names, as to what's included. So I'm going to ask a question here, and I'm going to see, and I want you all to be very, very honest. If a seller has a home, and they are listing it, and they have a beautiful bathroom, and they have gone to Restoration Hardware and purchased $300 mirrors over the sink frame, hanging on a hook. If there's nothing written in the contract, does the seller get to take those with them?
No.
Who doesn't know? Yes.
Hanging on
It's
a
hanging on a hook.
So they take it.
If it's not permanently
No.
mirrors are in that paragraph.
But I'm going to read you then, not to go back to the basics, but this is where everybody really gets caught. It says, now I want to read this, I'm going to read this paragraph to you because all across the state when I go to teach, this is never a clear answer. Everybody is so confused, and I don't know why, because I think it's because we have a hard time reading. Okay, it says, included as part of the property, if present, all attached light fixtures and bulbs, including ceiling fans, permanently attached plate glass mirrors, heating, cooling, and plumbing fixtures, and equipment, all doors, storm doors, and windows, all window treatments, which include shutters, blinds, shades, curtains, and draperies, even if they match the bedspread, and hardware, all wall-to-wall carpet, the range or stove, all built-in kitchen appliances, all bathroom fixtures, and bathroom mirrors. All bathroom mirrors. It doesn't say attached. If there's a mirror in the bathroom, it stays. So if you're taking a listing, and this paragraph is in a listing, you need to go over this with your seller so that they're very aware of what stays and what doesn't, and if they don't want it to stay, they need to take it or replace it or whatever. But you will be buying, how many here have bought a mirror? How many have bought a washer dryer? How many have bought a refrigerator?
Just for
No, for your clients, so that you can get them all. Sorry, start over. How many have bought a mirror? Raise your hand. How many have bought a washer dryer? How many have bought a refrigerator?
That's it.
Huh?
I think I've retired, but yes,
Yeah.
I've
I'm sure there's more that I bought. Microwave. So anyway, please understand that expectations are met when they're understood at the beginning. So if I were to say to you, the seller has gorgeous restoration hardware mirrors costing $5,000 each, hanging on a hook in the bathroom, does it stay? Yes, unless it is stated in this contract and everyone agrees they get to take them. Otherwise, the seller has to leave them if there's nothing in here.
I always find it's good just to like write it down, even if it's, you know, just always include it. Like I'm representing the buyer, and even if it says blah blah, I always ask for it.
Well, let me tell you where that can be, redundancy is not clarity. You've heard me say that. Redundancy can be very unclear. I had an agent who wrote under items to remain, all draperies. Does everybody remember this story? No? Well, you guys forget quickly. So she wrote all draperies to remain, but it says all draperies to remain. So the agent who received that contract said, okay, we knew that, it was already there. However, in the closet, in the master bedroom, remember that story? Were drapes taken off of the master bedroom windows and folded up in the closet, the master bedroom closet. They were on the floor with the hooks in. And they were, of course, $6,000 silk drapes from Japan, and the little worms had died, and there was nowhere to replace them. And the seller took it and made pillows of it. And of course, that's the only reason the buyer was buying the home, was because there were those blue draperies in the closet. And so they went to court and sued, and it was a year's worth of trouble. And finally, they split the money. The seller gave the buyer $3,000, and they agreed. And that was because there was not clarity.
So what would have been the better way to address that?
The only way to address it, because I thought that both agents should have been paid for it. I really did. My agent should not have written, including all draperies. That was a redundant statement. What should the agent for the buyer written?
Drapes and closet.
Including the blue drapes that are in the closet, because that was a vague thing. They weren't on the windows, and they said all draperies, so she just assumed that they had taken them off. That meant those weren't included. See, that was the assumption. What should the listing agent have said? I wonder why that agent wrote that again when it's already stated here. Is there something else that I wouldn't understand? So that was a confusion. By adding something that was already there, it confused the listing agent as to, is there something else? So no, I don't agree in rewriting things. Write what isn't there.
Just take it down and replace it with something cheap. It's like,
Well, okay, so let's not, so that's that. All right. So that is a real sticky point, and for some reason it's very, very difficult. Before I get into the contingencies, which I have passed out, let's talk about a couple of the other things. Binding agreement date. So let's cross off this one. We're going to talk about included. Binding agreement date. Who can describe that to me? Do we have the, let's do the song. Who's going to sing? Come on, let's sing. Come on.
Signed, sealed, delivered, I'm yours.
I mean, I've been on a gondola listening to opera singers, and that was pitiful. Okay. But, anyway, signed, sealed, delivered. Alright? Then I'm yours. Okay? Delivery. So, in the contract, we changed some of the wording on acceptance and binding agreement date. So we said acknowledgement of receipt. We don't call it the binding agreement date. It says so-and-so, acknowledgement of receipt, blank, hereby acknowledges. So the blank is the person who has received the delivery. Acknowledges, hereby acknowledges receipt of the final accepted offer on blank date at what time. And this shall be referred to as the binding agreement date for the purposes of establishing performance deadlines as set forth in the agreement. Okay? So let's just play that a little bit. Suppose I am the listing agent and I get an offer and it is fabulous. I mean, it's just everything I ever dreamed of. So I hit accepts. Okay? Now the buyer has signed already, right at the top. Seller hits accepts and signs. Is it bound?
No.
No. So the listing agent, I take that page, okay, with the acceptance and the sellers, and I send it back to the buyer's agent. And it hits their email. Is it bound now?
No.
It's either one or the other.
Yes.
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 The minute it hits that email, it is delivered. It doesn't have to be opened. It doesn't have to be read. It's delivered and that contract is bound. Now the agent who received it has to write in there the date and time that it was delivered, which is in your box, your email box. Not when you woke up at 10 o'clock after a bender and opened your email. That does not constitute the time. But once it hits the email, it is delivered and bound. And that becomes the binding agreement date. Suppose I'm a listing agent and I get a contract that I'm not that fond of. So I hit counter, right? And I get a counter offer form and I write down everything I want to counter. And I sign the seller's, or they sign the seller's name, right? Okay. Now I send that counter offer back to the buyer's agent, right? The buyer's agent loves it, signs it. Is it bound? No. The buyer's agent must deliver it back to me, the listing agent, and then I am going to be the one that acknowledged, and that is the binding agreement. So if you don't send it back because you're at the Preds game and it won't go through your phone, and another offer comes in, can the seller accept it if it hasn't been delivered back? Absolutely.
So it's not binding. When it arrives, like, there's a little, you were saying originally, like, when it arrives in the email,
It's
that is the time.
But I said if you're at the Preds game and you never delivered it back.
Oh, never delivered.
And while everybody signed it, you haven't delivered it.
Returned it, right.
And this has happened, I can't even tell you, it seems to be always the Preds game, right? Somebody's always at a Preds game and can't get around to doing something. So this is critical. I mean, it sounds so basic, but this will determine the whole time frames that we were talking about when we get into this and everything else. Because that's the date that we're going to use for counting. Now, somebody, Tyler, do we have that famous question? What if it's 11:59 and a half? Or it's midnight? What day is that? Do we count that day? What do we think?
Time is time.
Time is time.
It's the time when the house sits.
Well, it is. It's local time.
Right.
Yes, absolutely. The point of this exercise is to make sure that contracts are bound by delivery and that two people, buyer and seller, can agree on a counting date and that we have a bound contract. Okay? That's the primary purpose. So it's very, very, very important that everybody's singing on the same page. So if it's midnight and they want to count that day, because when do you start counting? This is where it gets tricky. You start counting the next day. So if somebody sends it at 11:55, the next day you start is that day, that next day. Or if it's 12:02, you could get a whole extra day. Does that make sense? So I could say that you could get into a real pickle with another agent on 10 minutes worth of time if it's happening over midnight, right? I say please don't do that. As long as it's arrived, pick the day that either that one or that one, that both people can sing together, that's the day we start counting. Because that's what this is about. It's bound at 11:55 and it's bound at 12:10 when you deliver. Now, if we want to talk to the other agent and agree that we'll count the phone, you know what I'm saying? Because it's only 5 minutes. And that's something that I think two agents could work out. And yes, sir.
So just to clarify, the last example where buyer sends you something, you don't like it, you counter it, goes back, they say, okay, accept, they send it to you, then you have to acknowledge receipt,
Yes.
and that's when it's bound?
Not when I acknowledge it, it's bound when it gets to my email. The minute it hits the email, it's bound, whether I open it or not.
Okay.
But then I do have to open it eventually, and I have to sign it. So it is the day of delivery.
The day of delivery, so if they send, so if we send, okay, got it.
Got it?
Yep.
Yes.
This is not quite as crucial, but what do you do when the other agent binds it when they're not supposed to?
Well, I mean, yeah, you could, you know.
I just kind of let it go. I don't
Well,
know.
and well, actually, it's not that great because what they're acknowledging receipt of a final, and they're saying that they've acknowledged the receipt and they didn't have the final, so it's really wrong. Now, not to be arrogant or anything, but it can make a big difference when you start counting, right? So I don't know.
And generally the day works out. It doesn't. I just let it go. But like,
Well, that's why we changed the word. Okay. So, yeah. I would send it back because it could make a difference if you're the buyer in your buyer's timing a whole day for inspections or something.
I try to say like, once you accept, send it to me and I'll bind it and we'll be good. You know, like.
Well, that's where we have to get rid of the word binding. We don't bind contracts. We keep saying I'll bind it. And that's where I think everybody's confused. When they get it and they have two signatures, I'm gonna bind it. I don't bind contracts. You don't bind contracts. Who binds a contract? Buyers and sellers. We don't bind them. We just acknowledge the receipt that it's bound. And I think that's where people using, I'm gonna bind it.
So I think that's where the confusion is. If two signatures make it bound, even though it's not delivered, and you say another offer can come through, is it bound?
No, it's the two signatures don't bind it. I'm sorry. The two signatures bind it, but it has to be delivered to the person who doesn't know it was bound. Or, right? So the delivery, and then whether you opened it or not in your email, it's bound.
Because otherwise, someone could just choose to not open and say, oh, I never, you know, that would think, that's what I have to do.
Did I say that better?
I guess, yeah.
I know what I said. I didn't.
I think that's why people say they bind it, because in their receipt, they cause it to be bound.
Yes.
Well, they don't cause it to be bound because even if you don't fill this out, if it got delivered, it's bound.
You just acknowledge.
You're just acknowledging. This is an acknowledgement date. It's not a binding.
So we should just say, could you please acknowledge the binding of this?
That's what it is. We're just, and that's what we're going to use. We're trying so hard in the Forms Committee to rewrite this to make it understood because you got to have some day to start counting. Okay? All right. So are we good on that? For at least an hour or two. What did you say? Just remember, sign, seal, delivered. If it's delivered, it's bound. If it's never been delivered, it's not bound. Because think of this. If I don't know that a contract got delivered, if it never got delivered to me, even though there were 2 signatures, could I go out and buy another house? Yeah. And then it comes. So you've got to have that delivered to know that it's been mailed, it's delivered. That's an old saying of contracts. Signed, sealed, delivered. It's not a new one. It's just that we've been really lax in operating this. Okay. So let's go from there to inspections. So, and any contingency. So you start counting your days when? The day after the binding date, okay? So you start counting after, and what kind of days are they? Calendar or business? Calendar. Does anybody in this room think it's business? Thought it was business? Go ahead, tell me. Okay, cool. It is calendar days. And it starts on the day after the bounding agreement day. And only if one of your deadlines lands on a Saturday, Sunday, or legal holiday, it rolls to the next business. So let's do that. So let's say it's a Wednesday, and I got my contract delivered on a Wednesday, and that's the day it's bound, and we're all happy. And they have, the first deadline you have in the contract is you have 3 days to make application for a loan, if you're the buyer's agent. And deliver to the listing agent who the lender is, their phone number, that you've made application, and you've ordered a credit report. It says that in the contract. That is the first deadline, 3 days. So it's a Wednesday, right? We start counting on what? Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Uh-oh. Saturday's what? Saturday. And it's not. So because it falls on Saturday, it's gonna roll to when? Monday. Except Monday is the 4th of July. It's gonna roll to Tuesday. And it ends at what time? 11:59. So it's not business hours, it's not bank hours, it's 11:59. So if I have a contract that is accepted and bound and delivered on a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, okay? What if I have one that is accepted and delivered and it's a Friday? We start counting Saturday, not Monday. We count every day. It's only if it lands. So we count Saturday, Sunday, Monday. If Monday is a holiday, it would roll to Tuesday at 11:59. Okay, so that's the first one. And it's the same with all of the contingencies except for 4, which aren't contingencies. But all contingencies that are counted from the agreement day actually do roll. Is everybody clear on that? Yes.
Can you clarify that if there's a holiday within that
You
period
count
of
it.
time?
You count it. You count your Saturdays. You count your Sundays. You count your holidays. Only if it lands does it roll. And it's right in the contract, so that if anybody and those other companies that don't pay attention.
I had a very experienced, extremely experienced agent argue that.
All you have to do is go to the paragraph terminology. It's on page 8. Yellow it up and send it up. It's there. I promise.
Is that what home inspections as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay? But now there's 2 different deadlines for home inspections. Okay. So you have X amount of days that you give if you are making it contingent on an inspection for a buyer to get all of the inspections. It doesn't matter if they want 50 inspections. They have this amount of time to do them. Say it's 10 days. Okay? So once it's delivered, it's bound, you've got that date, and you start counting the following day. You count all your weekends, you count all your holidays, but at the 10th day, if it's not on a holiday, you know, it doesn't roll, there you are. At 11:59, the buyer must have done all of their inspections and delivered back to the seller what they're gonna do, and they have 3 choices, right? Okay? So the first choice is, they can say, this home is just a mess, I don't want anything to do with it, I'm walking away, and they say, because it looks bad. You have to have some substantial. But you do make note of why, it says with your, but you do not send the inspection. The inspection is by the buyer, it's owned by the buyer and the home inspector. So you don't send that, you just say, I'm out. And if you're within your time frame or earlier than your deadline, there is no question. And I know that sellers say, well, they didn't act in good faith and all this. Until that inspection time is over, the buyer can pretty much find a reason to get in, okay? Now, they're not supposed to use cosmetics, but I haven't found a perfect home yet that they couldn't find something that they could leave. Okay, so that's one option, before the deadline of 10 days. They have option number 2, which is, okay, I think this house is great, it's got minor problems, I'll take it as is. That's the second, they check them off, and that's where the notification comes in, Charles. The notification form has boxes, 3 pages, that you can use the notification form to check that box as it applies to what we're doing, and send that over as your response. So the notification isn't mandatory, but it's a great form, so you don't have to sit and make up some wording and whatever. The third option is one that's been the most prevalent, and that is that they want a chance now to negotiate repairs with the seller. So when you wrote the contract as a buyer, let's say you put in 3 days for a resolution period, meaning, okay, I'm going to, and so at the end of the 10th day for the inspection, you better have, and only before 11:59, a repair proposal filled out and delivered to the seller. Once you send that proposal, it starts right then the three days or whatever you put for the resolution, but you start counting the day after, okay? So when you receive it, now the day after you start counting those 3 days. And the same thing applies. If it falls on a Saturday, Sunday, or holiday, it rolls. So you've got that notification. There's also a wonderful form you guys should be using if you or do it on your computer. It is the RF 708, and that's the purchase and sale agreement timeline checklist. And it's in there, and it goes along with the contract. So you can, once you have a bound contract, you can count all your days up and add it in here. And so you can review when you go to check how we're doing, where you're at. So that's the RF 708 if you don't have that. I didn't give it to you, but it is, make a note that you're not, you've got to have some way, because you get more than, 2 contracts going, and you better have some way of keeping track.
I once had a buyer's agent list the dates out after the contract was bound in the body of an email, which we found very helpful. So everybody was on the same page the whole way through.
That's very nice. But everybody should be doing that with their own contracts. Yes.
So if you have like the 10-day inspection period and a 3-day resolution period, if you say you send it on the 7th day, and the 3 days start, and you do that,
You
lost those last 3 days, correct? Okay.
Yeah, you don't get to add them up. No, once you send the proposal, it ends the inspection, and you start your resolution. Yes.
So, just stepping back, the 14 days, within 14 days after the buyer enters the day, the buyer shall warn and represent to the seller via the notification form of a quote, all that. So, I was representing the buyer, I never had a seller ask for that. Because normally, when we submit our offer, I've got a pre-approval form from the lender.
Well, pre-approval is nothing.
I know. But I had never, interestingly, I had never been asked for that until this last transaction. So, and then she cited the checklist that you just.
Well, see, the problem that I have is there's agents out there representing buyers and sellers very poorly. And you only got it earned once, because, you know, things are fine until they're not.
But my lender was like, what do you mean? It's like, we've already said that he was like, oh my gosh, really? You
Well,
need
then I wouldn't use them either. Sorry. I mean, I'm really sorry that, we are called to do certain things. I mean, you can fudge certain things, but contracts is a serious thing. And when you sign a contract, that means that the seller and the buyer are obligated by the contract law to do what it's stated.
So I'm just.
And so nobody gets to decide that's not fair,
No, I'm just
including the lender. No, I know.
Who else is sending in notification forms within the 14 days? Because
How about within the 3 days?
I think a lot of people don't do it because the seller isn't, most of the time they want the deal and they're not gonna walk on, you
But-
didn't get me this.
But
if
the
they're-
seller, if you go down to the bottom, it says, if you don't receive it, and you know, Ann, if you don't receive it in that time frame, what's the options for the seller? Either the 2 or 3,
To request.
request it
right,
in writing.
Right.
And if the buyer doesn't get it back to the seller in how many days? 2. Again, we count, and that's a roller date, so you gotta see if it's on a Saturday, Sunday, but in 2 days, the buyer is in what? Default, which means the seller could keep the earnest money. But when you put 5 days to deliver the earnest money, obviously there isn't any in 3 days, or even in the 14 days, because you put 5 or 8 days for whenever they deliver it. And so we have failed to protect our sellers' options. Now, it's up to the seller whether they want to pursue it, but we have to be responsible for making sure our sellers have the options that we gave them in the contract. And if we don't follow it through, and I don't mean you personally,
Right.
I mean as an industry, then we have failed to protect, because if that seller ever said to you, well, I want out, they haven't done it and I want out and I want to keep their earnest money, and you say, well, we don't have the earnest money because remember it said and we didn't counter it. You know, so you've got to know these nuances and sit with your buyers and sellers and explain exactly what all of this means. Maybe they don't care, you're right, if it's the only person that ever looked at this horrible house, we're gonna nurse it along forever, just pleading to God that they'll do something. But if another offer comes in, which haven't you seen that, a house will be on the market forever. They finally accept an offer, and then 3 other people want it for more money, right? Right, it happens, and then they look at you, and you have failed to keep them in their time frame options so that they can accept.
But I'm not talking about this, I'm talking about like the notification form that you have hazard insurance, that you paid for the appraisal, all that. I mean, like, is everybody sending this out? Because I had never had it requested.
But they don't have to request it, it's on the buyer to get it.
Right.
And if they request
Well, we
it,
have the lender.
you're lucky, because if
Yeah.
they requested it, you have 2 days to get it to
Yeah.
them or you're in
Well,
default.
the lender, I mean, everything was fine, but the lender was like, I've never had people ask this before because, you know, we're clearly proceeding. I'm like, but they are requesting it, so we have to show this. And I'm like,
Okay, everybody, how many are doing
Who's
this?
sending in notification forms within 14 days that you're?
Raise your hand, who's abiding by the contract? 1,
Well,
2,
the-
3, 4,
I love the notification.
okay?
They say you make formal application of a loan, and they usually they have the lender on there, like, I know, most people don't exercise their right, but it's their right to be.
I know, I'm like, this has never been up before. So, and maybe because we'd always been in a flurry market, and now things are a little bit more, but,
Well,
and that's on the checklist that you've got, so.
any other questions? Yes,
I
sir.
don't know if you've seen, Zach has created kind of a templated letter that basically, got some of the details of the deal, and then below he goes in per the contract and kind of lists out